Greetings, Pilgrims. Welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today I've got something incredibly exciting for you. We have some great updates to our wall, and I'm going to share with you two updated scripts. Well, the one is a script and the other is our shader. So as you can see, the wall is closing in on us. Yes, thank you to the eagle-eyed among you who helped me point out that there was actually a problem with the script where it was not properly finding a new spot and moving. As you can tell here, it's chasing me. It's moving too quickly, too well, so we're going to get back inside of it here, but I'm going to show you the update to the script to make it move. And yes, you see that nice, beautiful white line that is chasing us beneath. I'm actually just going to pause the game here. That white line is the result of a shader. So let's bring our player into the zone here so that our screen gets a bit better next time we look at it. And now if I go to the game view, you can see we're inside, right? Because I moved myself in. But let's take a quick look. I'm going to zoom in here and kind of cheat a little bit. Do some no clipping and fly around. Let's take a look at our ground here, and you'll see that where the ground and the wall meet, we have this bright shining line, and that's the result of a shader that we have going here. So let's resume the game here. And resume, and we'll be able to see that. Oh no, I'm falling through the floor. Sorry. I'm gonna raise myself up too. So let's do that real fast. I want to show you guys the result of this, and it is so much fun. So let's do that. Okay, there we go. So now I'm just gonna fall back down to the ground here in a second, but you can see the line there at the very edge, and anywhere it meets any other geometry. So this will be true for buildings, this will be true for the ground, even supposedly the player model as it goes across a player model. I can't see that yet because we're only in a first person mode, but you can see right there the line creeping across the landscape. It's really cool when it comes at you. So this is a shader, and then the script is to update the movement of the actual wall, because there was a problem with it not properly calculating a point inside of the new half circle. So we are working with a 50% reduction here, and you could in theory change it to any percent if you wanted to make it 70% or 30%, whatever you want. I have it set to 50%, so feel free to mess with it from there. Let's take a look at the updates that we have going on here, okay? So our player just begins over here. It's just a nice little coastal area, but the circle actually begins at a 4,000 radius. So right now it's just in the center here. Let's take a look at it under the BRS safe zone. So this is tagged at 000 on the transform. So we just kind of reset that. So you right click and say reset. It'll put it at 111 for the scale and 000 for the position. The zone wall itself, I've set this to reset it, but then I changed the Y value to 25 just to make it really, really tall so that it always is cutting through the landscape. Even when it gets to one of these low points, we want to make sure that it's cutting through the landscape properly, okay? So we do have an update to some of its scripts over here. So all of this is fine, but the material here has changed. Sorry, not script. I said scripts, I meant material. The material here has changed. So you will need to create a material and then assign this shader. So I'll provide the shader for download, and all you have to do is it has to be in your project somewhere. You can see here, I have it right here, the BRS intersection shader. So then what you do is you're going to create a material. So if I go to my wall here, I'm going to right click and say create material, give it a name, right? Name it whatever you like. And then when you assign it, so when you drag and drop it onto your zone wall, and I have it set to the interior as well, then you'll see it show up over here. But the shader, this will probably say standard. You'll have to click this and choose under the BRS for Battle Royale series, and then choose the BRS intersection. Oh, sorry, it's actually under unlit. Down here, unlit BRS intersection. I apologize, this was me kind of trying out these wall shaders for you guys and making them work. But the one you want is down here under unlit BRS intersection, okay? I can update that, but I think I'll wait until we have the full set. I will update it, and eventually everything will be under this category, so it'll be nice and easy. But for now, it is an unlit texture, technically, so we have it under the unlit category. So there you go, unlit BRS intersection. So you just click that, you'll see it update here, and then you have to supply one texture, and then I supplied the tiling here and some of these settings. My settings, the Fresnel intensity is how bright that line is when it's at the bottom, and then the highlight of intersect is how much of that, how tall do you want that line to be? And I just set it to 1, the most we can get out of it. Now the tiling is because of our pattern and the scale of it, and I'm going to be updating this as well in the future because as the wall closes, we need to also change the tiling of the material to make sure that the wall always looks the same, because the scale when it's way out here is different from when it's an itty bitty little 40-foot circle. we need to change the scaling to make sure the wall always looks correct. So for right now, those are the two changes that we need to do another day, is getting this patterning to properly kind of change, and it has to be dynamic with the lerping to make sure that as the wall shrinks, the pattern changes its tiling appropriately to remain kind of static. And the other change you'll notice that we'll be dealing with here, I'll show you another run here, is that the wall kind of moves at the same rate. So if I hit play, and I'm going to just immediately drop out and go into the scene view so we can watch it happen. So here it's the whole island size. You'll notice that as soon as it counts down and it starts moving, it's going to be moving at a really fast rate, kind of an unfairly fast rate. See, if you had dropped here, look at how screwed you are. The wall is going faster than you can even get into the first house and get a gun, right? So right now it's moving at a rate of 10 seconds. So it's going to move at the same speed as which it waits for the delay in between the movements. So right now it's kind of not working entirely right. We're still working that part out. But it will move for you. And if some of you are super coders out there, then you guys can take this and find a way to do it and share with us your solution, because we're still working on the solution ourselves. And this is a great way that we can share as a community. But for right now, it moves at the same rate. It moves at the same rate that it waits. So we need to separate those so that we can sort of program a list of movements. Because if you look at our current circle script, here it has 8 movements, each of which I put at 10. Now I could make these smaller or larger, but then you would end up with a circle that moves even faster. So what we need to do is this movement needs to be relative to the size in kilometers that it's moving. So for example, a 1 kilometer circle would need to move about twice as slowly as one that is half a kilometer circle, because you don't want it to go super fast when it's small, but you want, when it's large, you want it to take its time to get to the next one, and you want it to speed up as it goes. That's the kind of the idea. So we need to put in that logic eventually. We're still working that out ourselves. So again, if you guys are super coders out there, go ahead and take a look and tell us what you think. So let's look at some of the stuff we've got going on here. I'll bring up MonoDevelop here, and I have moved for some contract work. I've moved over to 2018, so you'll see Visual Studio, you'll see MonoDevelop kind of back and forth, okay? All right, so here's our change circle script, and the only thing that really changed in here was some of the logic down here to make this delay movement work. I added a couple of things. I'll just show you briefly what they are. In here, when we set up the local scale of our object, we were scaling by 1 here. So that means it was going by 1 based upon the size of the original model. However, the model was originally just brought in from Maya, and we want to make sure that it stays relevant to whatever we set it. So I set it to 25. It should be 25 all the time. So what this is doing is saying, let's create a new scale where the x radius times whatever amount we give it. So if I go in here and say I want it to be 8,000 or 4,000 or 100, it will scale on the x and on the z, but we're just using one radius value here. But it will remain the same height that we want it to be. So that's what we needed there. So I put that there, and I put that down here somewhere. Let me find it for you, just so that it is clear that that's what it is doing. I thought it was in here somewhere. Might be up here a little bit. But anyway, it's in here. I think it's in here. Yeah, right here. Zone wall transform local scale.y. So this way, when we are moving the point and when we are initially setting the point size, we're making sure that we respect that y value so that it remains the same height. That's the only real changes that I made, and then a little bit of work in here. I left some of my scratch work in to show you guys what we were working on. Dividing by 2 of the current circle, because when you have a circle and then you want to pick a spot within it, you need to make sure that the new circle at its widest point will fit within the old circle. So the easiest way to do that is say, let's just divide by 2. So we know that the new circle, especially if we're doing a 50% right now, 50% up here, 50% reduction factor, that means that the new circle is going to be half the size of the first circle. And that's roughly the way it is in like PUBG, Fortnite, other games. So with keeping with that logic, if we know that the new circle is going to be half the size of the current one, then we can tell it, hey, just go ahead and get that size right now, and then pick your point from within that space. The old code up above here, you can see it was choosing from the current radius, which is not what we really need. We needed it to be the new upcoming current radius, not the current radius. So by making that change here and by saying, you know what, dude, just go ahead and pick from a smaller pool right away, you'll see that it works a lot nicer. Okay, so that is the code to make this thing run a bit better. So let's talk about the shader here. And I did get a lot of help looking through this, lots of examples, tutorials. I found one in particular that I borrowed a lot of the code from, and I want to give credit where credit is due. I apologize, the gentleman's name is in Chinese, I believe, so I can't pronounce it, so I'm not going to disrespect him by trying. But most of this code is based upon his hard work, and I will definitely, there will be a link in the description, and you can link right to his website. Go subscribe, he does some amazing work, but I will provide this as a download because I did modify it quite a bit. His is pretty incredible. You have a texture that actually scrolls, and it has this really cool distortion effect, almost like glass. I kind of cut out most of that because I didn't really want it for my purposes, but this will get you the kind of the bare bones to get that intersection shader, okay? So let's do something really quick here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little closer here. I'm gonna fly in here and maybe put a box in there so we can see the effect work, okay? Here we go, we'll get a little closer so you can actually see what's happening here. You see this white bright line, and this is the actual intersection happening here. So let's create a box. So game object, 3D object cube. All right, and I want to bring this cube to me, but it's in the middle of the world here. So let's do this. Come to me, cube. It's getting closer. Come to me. There we go. There you are, cube. Hey. I said come to me, cube. Where'd you go? I had a cube. And oh, it's way out here now. Okay, there it is. So with this cube, what we're going to do is scale him up quite a bit just so that we can see the effect here. All right, cool. I'm getting too close for the camera. It's not, it's starting to clip the camera of the cube. Come on. Scale it up. There we go. Okay, so now when I move this cube into this effect, you'll be able to actually see it really nicely. So that line comes right up and goes right around the cube there. You see that? And it's dynamic. So as soon as the cube exits that field of view, it's not going to happen anymore. And as soon as it enters again, and it'll even slide along that edge like that. So when this is moving slower and the wall is creeping in, you get this really cool glowing movement effect. All right, so to get this effect, you're essentially taking every pixel of this texture and saying, hey, if you're reaching a point where the view depth and the depth behind this are no longer playing correctly, then we need to do something. And what we need to do in our case here is we want to draw this line right along the edge of where that's happening. So that's kind of the gist of what's going on, okay? Because a lot of this may not make sense to a lot of you, and it didn't really make sense to me, but I'll try to explain it. So the way a shader works is essentially you begin with some properties, and these are all the properties for what you want it to take in. So like main color here, you're picking a color, you're feeding it a texture, we're feeding it a value called Fresnel, which is that rounded edging where you can get just the edge of things. And then our intersection threshold, this is a value that we're going to use, right? The tags and all this stuff here is telling it what kind of a texture, what category it's going to be, and kind of what things it wants to borrow from, right? Right here, the CG program, this is the beginning of your computer graphics program. So this is going to tell you, here's how we're actually going to handle the graphics on the screen. And so we're dealing with a vertex and with a fragment. And so remember, this is happening per vertex and per pixel on the screen. So the include is we're including a library of things that we can use. Now for our app data, these are structs. So this is like a structure of data that we're going to use here. We need the vertex, we need our normal position, and we need the texture coordinate of our UVs. So we can say, let's get some information about the texture because we're going to make some changes to it. All right, so down here, we're going to do fixed 4 is a 4 position value, a 3 position, X, Y, Z. A fixed 2 is a U and V, see? So 2 position, 4 position, pardon me, for the vertex for our SV position. And then our rim color and our screen position, these are going to be texture coordinates as well. All right, so we're just kind of getting data and setting up, here's the data we expect to get. And more here. Sampler 2D is how you talk about a 2D texture, because we're using that a lot. So our main text, our camera depth, and we're going to grab a texture. And then here we're converting those and saying, if we're going to do a fixed 4, we need to get more values out of our main text ST. So we're going to say, what is the RGB and alpha for some of these things? All right. And then our fixed values for the Fresnel and the intersection threshold, these are making variables out of the data that we told that we're going to pass this in. All right. So now we're going to get into the actual work here. So for our input, we're going to input our main textures, UVs. And then on a per vertex, we're going to go through here and say our O is going to be our working value here, right? So O.vertex says get the vertex. O.uv says, hey, at this UV coordinate from the main texture, get me the textures that is here at this specific spot. Now for the Fresnel, what we're going to do is we're going to say our view direction is a normalized version of our object view space based upon the view of this vertex. Then we're going to say the dot product. Dot product is kind of like a fancy way of saying if you're dealing with angles, so anything on this side of a 90 degrees, so if you draw a line like this, anything over here is going to be a positive value, anything over here is going to be a negative value. It's kind of a way to say, I have a value, I'm not quite sure what the angle is going to be, but I can tell you roughly which side it's going to be on. So very rough and poor description of a dot product, but we're getting that value. Now we're saying that the rim color of this particular vertex that we want is going to be a smooth step between two values multiplied by our dot product multiplied by half of a float. So we're going to say that we're going to smoothly interpolate on the rim, on the very edge, between two values using this dot product, using the angle based upon what angle we come in. We're going to be smooth stepping between these two values. Makes sense, right? If you look at a glass lens directly on, you might not get any reflection, but if you look at it at an angle where you're catching the light along the side, you're going to get a reflection, right? So based upon the angle, we're going to smooth this stuff out. Then our screen position is going to be just get our screen position and put it into this vertex. And now the compute eye depth, this is a little confusing to me too, but it's using the screen position to compute kind of how the camera is currently looking at something. And then we're going to return all that value that we've put into the O. So O.rim color, O.screen. So we're going to push that out. All right. So in here for the actual intersection, we're going to say that our intersect value is we're going to saturate and then a whole bunch of stuff in here. Okay. I don't expect you to understand this, but the absolute value of the linear eye depth, getting our 2D texture, getting the camera depth, saving that as a screen from the screen position minus the screen position on the Z to get to the other side of it, divide by the intersection threshold. So we're just kind of getting that value of how much of an intersection do we have at this point. Our main texture is going to be our 2D texture, and then we're going to say I.uv because we're bringing in a value of I when we put this in, okay? So we're getting the UV values from that. For the distortion, we're going to say the distort color is equal to our texture. We're going to grab our texture from the screen position and store it into the eye. Then our distort color is going to be that times equals the main, so this other value. So we're kind of combining these two things. And then main color dot A, which is the alpha value plus 1. So this means that we're going to combine these two textures, but one is going to be combined by the alpha of the first. Again, I know it's very confusing. You don't have to listen to all this, but just I wanted to explain kind of what I've learned. The intersection highlight is kind of similar. We're going to take our rim color, multiply it by the intersection that we did up here, and then clamp the value a little bit because we don't want to have crazy values that just blow out our texture. And then our main color is going to be the main times the power against our Fresnel. So this way that you get that highlight along the edge, but you don't get it inside because we're using the Fresnel in its place. Then finally we apply all the colors to everything. So our main color is a lerp between a distortion color and our main color based upon our rim color. Makes sense? Then our main color here plus equals, we're going to do an intersection, a 1 minus intersection times, now this part is very confusing to me too, but we're getting a value that is between two extremes, and we're saying that we're going to take the intersection value and multiply it. So if we do a minus to begin with, and a plus equals to less than 1, somehow you get a positive number, okay? Because then we're going to also multiply by the main color and by the Fresnel so that we get an absolute value. And then we're just going to return all of that to the pixel. So the idea is that this is being called for every pixel, and it's saying, what do I do? Well, do all this stuff, and now shoot it back out to the pixel, okay? So again, you don't have to understand this. You don't have to follow it at all, but just you have to know how to use it, right? So it needs to be in your project. You create your material, you assign your material, and that's on this guy here. And it'll come in like this. You have to select the texture, and I selected from the BRS from the episode 1 when we first did the wall. I chose the actual emissive one here, so that I got more color into this, because if you choose the other ones, they don't look as nice. See, it's kind of just transparent. So I wanted the color to come in there. Your main color here is really more of a multiplication to the wall, to the highlight line. So you can see that. So I chose white to make it really, really glow nicely. And then again, the tiling here, that's the scaling for the wall. It looks crazy like this. You see when the circle gets tiny, That's the problem. We need to change this dynamically based upon the size. So that's coming later on. Then your Fresnel intensity. So here you can see that's how brightly this glows. So I had that around like 130 or so. And this is how much of it there is. So almost nothing to the absolute maximum is 1 for this value, just so that you can see the line. And there you go. And it all works together. So now, again, I will provide in the download the updated script that you will need to replace, and I'll show you where we need to replace that right now. So in your BRS mechanics, if you've been following along with all the tutorials, you will have this thing that is called current circle. It's an object in your world. I have it zeroed out and 111. You need to replace the script here. So the way to do that, for me, it's in this spot. Where is it at? Shrinking circle scripts. It's right here. Change circle script. The easiest way to do that is select your object here in the world and then right click on this and say remove component. So it'll take the script off of this object. Okay? Then go into your folder structure here, find it, and delete it from your project. Then wait for everything to settle for a second and then bring in the new one in its place that's named the exact same thing. So it's brs underscore change circle.cs because it is a C# script. Bring that in, just drag and drop it here, or you can right click and say import new asset and bring it in that way. Once it computes, you'll see a little thing in the corner here, it'll compute. Then you want to select it and then just drag and drop it on here. And then these are the values I've set. For an 8K by 8K map, I have this set to the center of the world, 64 segments for the circle, and it's really mostly for the mini map, for this to show up on the mini map nicely. But an X radius of 4,000, Y radius of 4,000. The Y radius doesn't really matter. We're probably going to replace that in the end because it's using X for both because it's a circle. And then the zone radius factor, I have it set to 50. So that's 50% every time it will reduce by. The zone times, you put in this size for your array. How many shrinks do you want? So in a PUBG match, there are 8 shrinks. So it'll shrink 8 times. So what I have set here is just 8. And for example, demo purposes for you all, I have this set to 10 for every single one. You could change these. You could set this to 1 and it'll shrink really fast on the last circle. So whatever you like. So if you have all of that set up correctly and all of that set in place, then when you hit play, it will start shrinking. And in my code here, let me see if I can do this. Escape, console, clear. I have a countdown. There you go. 4 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds, 1. It will count down and tell you when it's going to start moving. So now it's moving. And in the debug, it'll tell you the position that it chose and the distance between the current center and the next center. So we should know that that distance should always be half or actually less than half of our current setup and the next one. So that way we know that we're actually within our proper bounds. And here we'll see the line come creeping over the landscape. It's really cool to watch it just kind of fly at us, Sorry, a little bit of hiccup there because of the recording process. But there we go. Excellent. So that's all working well. And we've made some positive changes to our project here. And I appreciate you guys sticking with me. And just today, we hit 3,000 subscribers. So thank you so much for all of the kind time and attention you guys have been spending with the pilgrimage. Please keep sending in your suggestions, your comments, everything. I do look at absolutely everything. And if I don't know something, I do plan on learning it and trying to make a video on it because I want to learn and grow right along with you guys. So if you have any comments, questions, any of you guys out there have some codes that you can help us out with and try to figure out how to make the circle shrink at different times, please, it's open source. Take a look at it. Let us know. See what you can do. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for all of it. So thank you again so much. So until next time, guys, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.